In January 1970, Nigeria emerged from one of the most devastating conflicts in African history, the Nigerian Civil War. The country was exhausted, but it remained intact. At the center of this fragile peace stood the military leader who guided Nigeria through the war, Yakubu Gowon. For 5 years after the war, his government presided over a rapidly expanding oil economy and retained the loyalty of the armed forces. Yet, by July 1975, that same government collapsed overnight. Power passed quietly to Murtala Mohammed, with Olusegun Obasanjo as the deputy. No war, no uprising, just a sudden shift of power. The question is not simply how the coup happened. The deeper question is why a government that survived civil war could not survive peace. And what happens when post-war promises collide with oil wealth, political delay, and growing dissatisfaction inside the military. To understand the event of the 1975, we must examine the fragile peace that followed the war. The Nigerian Civil War ended in 1970. After nearly 3 years of devastating conflict, the federal government defeated the secessionist state of Biafra. The war threatened the survival of Nigeria itself. Entire region had been destroyed. Millions displaced. The country was deeply traumatized. At this critical moment, Gowon delivered one of the most important political declarations in Nigerian history. No victor, no vanquished. The message was strategic. Rather punish the defeated region, the government would pursue reintegration. The official policy framework became known as the 3 R's: Reconstruction, Rehabilitation, and Reconciliation.
Let us have the acceptance of the spirit of one Nigeria. Glad to see you again.
My pleasure.
How are you?
Very well, indeed.
Glad to see you again. Thank you.
Patrick Amadi.
How are you?
Excellency.
Glad to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you again.
It's an experience.
Honestly. Glad to see you again.
And I would like, therefore, to take this opportunity to say that I, Major General Philip Effiong, officer administering the government of the Republic of Biafra, now wish to make the following declaration. That we affirm we are loyal Nigerian citizens and accept the authority of the federal military government of Nigeria.
The objective was to stabilize the country and rebuild national unity, but the practical reality of post-war recovery soon revealed the limits of political declarations. One of the most controversial policies of the post-war period involved financial reintegration. Individuals returning from the former Biafran territory who had bank deposits before the war were allowed to withdraw only £20, regardless of the original amount. The government justified the measure as financial stabilization policy. Biafran currency had to be replaced with the Nigerian currency, and the banking system needed to be reset. But for many, the consequences were severe. Entire savings accumulated before the war effectively disappeared overnight. Economically, this placed many families at disadvantage during the Reconstruction period. Politically, it undermined the perception that reconciliation was being implemented fairly. The gap between symbolic unity and economic reality began to shape the attitude towards the post-war state. Let's look at the reconstruction and lingering tensions. Rebuilding Nigeria after the war required enormous effort. Infrastructure in several regions had been destroyed. Transportation network needed repair. Communities needed to reintegrate former soldiers and displaced civilians. The federal government invested heavily in reconstruction programs. But rebuilding fiscal infrastructure proved easier than rebuilding trust, don't you think? Post-war societies often struggle with lingering suspicions and resentment. Nigeria was no exception.
We are at the dawn of national reconciliation. Once again, we have an opportunity to build a new nation.
The country had avoided renewed conflict, but political system remained fragile beneath the surface. As for the oil boom, just as Nigeria was navigating those post-war challenges, a new factor dramatically changed the country's trajectory. In the early 1970s, global oil prices rose sharply. Nigerian petroleum exports generated massive new revenues. Government incomes increased rapidly. The oil boom created enormous opportunities. With sufficient discipline, the new wealth could have accelerated national development, but sudden resource wealth often introduced serious government challenges. Government spending expanded quickly. Large contracts and projects multiplied. Administrative systems struggled to keep pace with the scale of financial expansion. As a result, accusation of corruption and inefficiency began to circulate widely. For a military government that had once promised discipline and reform, these developments raised uncomfortable questions. By mid-1970s, a central issue dominated Nigerian politics. When would the military return power to civilians? After the Civil War, the military leaders had indicated that their rule was temporary. The expectation was that civilian governance would eventually be restored, but as years passed, a clear timetable failed to emerge. In 1974, Gowon made a decisive announcement that Nigeria was not yet ready for civilian rule and that the transition would be postponed. This decision proved a major political turning point. For many Nigerians, it suggested that the military government had begun to lose its sense of urgency. Within the armed forces themselves, dissatisfaction began to grow. Some officers believed that the government had drifted from its original mission. Others believed leadership had become complacent. In military systems, such perceptions can quickly destabilize authority. Within the military hierarchy, several concerns had begun to circulate. Administrative inefficiency, corruption within the government circles, and the absence of clear political direction. These concerns gradually created the condition in which a coup could be justified internally. Military coups are rarely spontaneous. They emerge when groups of officers conclude that leadership has lost its legitimacy or effectiveness. By mid-1975, such calculations were already underway. While the government spoke of progress, the reality was visible from the shore of Lagos. This was the era of the Cement Armada. In a feverish rush for reconstruction, the government ordered over 60 million metric tons of cement, far exceeding the capacity of Nigerian ports. And by 1975, over 400 ships sat idle in the Atlantic, creating maritime traffic jam that stretched for miles. The state was paying millions of dollars every day for this. Fines for ships that couldn't unload to the public. Those 400 ships were not just logistical error. They were floating to administrative routes. It was the moment Nigeria realized that having wealth was useless if you lack competence to manage it. Then came the Udoji Awards. In an attempt to share the oil wealth, the government granted massive, backdated salary increases to public servants. On paper, the people were richer. In reality, it was an economic disaster. The sudden influx of cash triggered galloping inflation. Prices for basic goods skyrocketed overnight. While civil servants celebrated, the private sector, the traders, the laborers, and the farmers were left behind. The result? A wave of industrial strikes that paralyzed the country. The fragile peace of 1970 had officially evaporated. Gowon had lost the market, he had lost the streets, and soon he would lose the barracks. Every leader believed they are safe as long as their gatekeeper is loyal. For Gowon, that gatekeeper was Colonel Joseph Garba, the commander of the Brigade of Guards. Garba was more than an officer. He was a trusted member of Gowon's inner circle, tasked with the head of state personal safety. The irony of July 29 is haunting. Before departing the OAU summit in Kampala, Gowon was warned of a plot. He looked Garba in the eye and reportedly said, "If you are plotting, let it be on your conscience." He flew out, and the conscience of the military spoke. It was Garba himself who walked into the NBC radio to announce the end of Gowon's era. The very man sworn to protect the leader became the voice that dethroned him. It was surgical, bloodless strike that proved timeless tactical truth. The most dangerous threat is rarely the enemy at the gates. It is the one already in the palace. By 1975, Dissatisfaction within the army has crystallized. Officers questioned the efficiency of Gowon's administration, the perceived widespread corruption among top officials, the indefinite delay of civilian rule undermined the confidence in the leadership. Such environments are fertile for conspiracies. The stage was set for a coup. The July 1975 coup was well planned and strategically timed. Murtala Mohammed, senior officer, respected for decisiveness, became the head of state. Olusegun Obasanjo, trusted deputy, later responsible for consolidating control. Other influential officers coordinated communication and troop movement, securing army headquarters and major stations and key military commands. Murtala Mohammed was strategic with his leadership. He had the final authorization of the coup execution. Obasanjo, operational coordination ensured units followed precisely. The operational officers took control of the barracks, communication centers and transport hubs, radio communications and teams, delivered the public announcement to prevent confusion or resistance. The timing was absolutely absolute. Let's look at the tactical analysis. Timing. Gowon was gone out of the country, reducing the risk of immediate counter-coup. Speed. Key military installations were secured within hours. Control of information. The public announcement was broadcast immediately to establish legitimacy. Minimal force. The operation relied on surprise and precision, avoiding widespread conflict. The operation demonstrated classical coup planning, secrecy, timing, rapid action, and control of public perception. The coup was complete. The military hierarchy, civilian leadership, and public were forced to accept the new government as the new center of power.
Fellow Nigerians, events of the past few years have indicated that despite our great human and material resources, the government has not been able to fulfill the legitimate expectations of our people. Nigeria has been left to drift. This situation, if not arrested, would inevitably have resulted in chaos and even shed. In the endeavor to build a strong, united, and virile nation, Nigerians have shed much. The thought of further shed, for whatever reasons, must, I'm sure, be revolting to our people. The armed forces, having examined the situation, came to the conclusion that certain changes were inevitable. After the Civil War, the affairs of state, hitherto a collective responsibility, became characterized by a lack of consultation, indecision, indiscipline, and even...
What are the consequences? The overthrow of Gowon closed an important chapter in Nigerian history. He had presided over a country during its most dangerous crisis and maintained national unity during the war. But leadership after war requires more than wartime legitimacy. It required sustained political direction. Within 1970 and 1975, several developments gradually eroded the foundations of Gowon's authority. The unresolved complexity of post-war reconciliation, the institutional strain created by sudden oil wealth, and the political uncertainty created by postponing civilian rule. Taking together these key factors weakened the stability of his government.
From all indication, a new government has been established in Nigeria. I wish to state that I, on my part, have also accepted the change and pledge my full loyalty to my nation, to my country, and the new government. Therefore, in the overall interest of the nation and our beloved country, I appeal to all concerned to cooperate fully with the new government and ensure the preservation of peace, unity, and the stability of our dear motherland. As a Nigerian, I am prepared to serve my country in any capacity which my country may consider appropriate. I am a professional soldier, and I can do any duty that I am called upon to do.
The Gowon offers several enduring lessons. First, reconciliation policy must address economic reality as well as political symbolism. Secondly, natural resource wealth can strengthen a state, but without strong institutions, it can also intensify corruption and inefficiency. Finally, the government can promise temporary rule, most eventually define a credible path towards transition. When that path becomes uncertain, legitimacy begins to erode. By 1975, many officers concluded that Nigeria required a new direction. Their solution was decisive. In the next episode, we will examine the dramatic rise of Murtala Mohammed and the radical reforms that will follow his sudden rise to power.
May I take this opportunity to thank all the people of Nigeria and friends of Nigeria for the support and cooperation that you all gave me during my tenure of office, and call upon you all to give the new government of our nation the same support and cooperation in the interest of our beloved country.